Can a prisoner appear victorious even in handcuffs? Picture this: the streets of Lahore, 1951. A horse cart carries a man to prison, but the crowds that gather aren't mourning. They're celebrating, throwing flowers, cheering as if welcoming their most beloved hero home. And the man in the cart? He has a gentle smile on his lips. This man is Faiz Ahmad Faiz, and he knows a profound truth. Chains can imprison the body, but never the soul. This is the story of a poet who transformed the clinking of his shackles into the most beautiful, defiant music humanity has ever heard. A man who taught us that the greatest rebellion is to love, even in the face of unimaginable hate. Faiz's life began not in rebellion, but in brilliance. Born in Siakat, the same city that gave the world the great poet Allama Iqbal, Faiz was a prodigy from a young age. His intellectual light shone brightest at Government College Lahore, a legendary institution that nurtured some of the finest minds of the subcontinent. Here, his talent was so undeniable that it literally broke the grading scale. His English professor, a man named Dixon, was once so captivated by Faiz's work that he gave him 165 marks out of a possible 150. When the college principal, understandably bewildered, questioned this impossible score, Professor Dixon's reply was simple and absolute. If I could have given him more, I certainly would have. This was the kind of mind we were dealing with. Yet, this towering intellect was housed in a man of profound humility. When Faiz finally had the chance to meet his literary hero, Allama Iqbal, he was so overwhelmed, so completely awestruck, that he literally ran away from the encounter. He felt too small, too unworthy to stand in the presence of the giant whose philosophical footsteps he would one day follow. Genius, it seems, often comes wrapped in the softest cloth of humility. Faiz was a living testament to that, a man whose vast knowledge was matched only by his gentle spirit. Now, every genius has their quirks, their peculiar rituals that unlock the doors of their creativity. For Faiz, that ritual came in the form of a cigarette. He was a notorious chain smoker, a habit that was as much a part of his public image as his poetry. His former teacher, Sufi Tabassum, once shared a fascinating story from Faiz's student days. During an important exam, Faiz sat completely still, his pen untouched, his paper blank. Worried, his teacher approached him and asked what was wrong. Faiz, with a hint of sheepishness, confessed, "Sir, my mind doesn't work without cigarettes." In that era, such a request during an exam was unheard of. But his teacher, perhaps sensing the extraordinary mind before him, reluctantly went and brought him a single cigarette. What happened next was pure magic. As soon as the smoke filled the air, Faiz's pen began to move. It didn't just write. It danced across the paper, flowing with an unstoppable rhythm, creating verses that would one day outlive empires and inspire generations. It's a strange thought, isn't it? That a simple, controversial habit could be the key to unlocking such profound beauty. It reminds us that genius doesn't follow our rules. It makes its own. But behind the smoke and the towering intellect was a heart of almost childlike tenderness. Faiz's capacity for empathy was boundless, extending not just to the grand struggles of humanity, but to the smallest sorrows of a single child. There's a beautiful story about his friend's little daughter, Mariam. One day, the little girl was inconsolable because her favorite doll had broken its leg. Seeing her tears, Faiz did something extraordinary. He didn't just offer empty words of comfort. Instead, with all the seriousness of a state affair, He proposed a formal wedding for the doll, to mend her broken heart and make her feel whole again. This was the man he was. Children adored him. They would flock to him, throwing colored powder on his crisp white clothes during celebrations, laughing at his gentle jokes, and making him the center of their innocent, chaotic world. And through it all, Faiz just smiled. He believed with his entire being that the sound of a child's laughter was more precious than all the treasures of the universe. He was a man who felt the pain of the world, but also found infinite joy in its smallest wonders. His heart beat for every soul, big or small. This deep empathy would inevitably lead him into conflict with the powers that be. In 1951, Faiz was arrested in the infamous Rawalpindi conspiracy case, accused of attempting to overthrow the government. He faced the very real possibility of a death sentence. Lesser men would have crumbled. But Faiz, even in the shadow of the gallows, remained remarkably calm, often seen with his signature cigarette in hand, a wry smile playing on his lips. His real trial, however, began in solitary confinement. They stripped him of everything, most cruelly of his pen and paper. They sought to silence him. But they underestimated the power of a poet. In that desolate cell, Faiz made a declaration that would echo through history, a defiant cry against oppression. He wrote, "If they take away my pen and paper, what sorrow is that? I have dipped my fingers in the blood of my heart." And so he did. He transformed his own suffering into his ink. He would gaze out of his tiny prison window, meticulously counting the shimmering colors on the necks of wild pigeons, turning these fleeting, humble details of nature into immortal verses of freedom and hope. They had locked up his body, but his spirit was soaring, finding poetry in the patterns of a sunbeam on the floor, in the rustle of leaves outside his window. Even in chains, Faiz was more free than his captors. His voice, both in person and on the page, had a unique quality. The renowned scholar Professor Gopi Chand Narang once described listening to Faiz as an almost physical experience. He said it was like feeling a gentle, loving hand being placed upon the wounded surface of your heart, a voice that healed as it spoke. This gentle voice, however, carried the most revolutionary of ideas. He penned poems like Dekhenge, We Shall See, a powerful prophecy of a day when the oppressed would rise and the thrones of tyrants would crumble. It was a poem so potent, so dangerous, that he never saw it officially published in his own lifetime. Yet today, decades after his passing, those very words have become the anthem of resistance movements across the globe. From the streets of Delhi to protests in Chile, Dekhenge is sung by a new generation fighting for justice. It's an incredible legacy. His gentle whisper, born in a prison cell, became humanity's roar for a better world. Faiz Ahmad Faiz taught us a fundamental lesson about survival and resistance. He showed us that when they try to steal your voice, you can turn every link of your chains into a tongue. He redefined the very concept of love, elevating it from a personal, private emotion into a revolutionary force. He argued that the truest love is not the one we reserve for an individual, but the one we extend to all of suffering humanity. When we choose to love the world over our own comfort, when we choose empathy over apathy, we become part of something eternal, something indestructible. Faiz remains that shining, unwavering star in the vast sky of Urdu literature, a star that will forever promise us that no matter how dark the night, a new dawn is always coming. His whispers became the world's battle cry for hope. And in every corner of this earth where a single person stands up against injustice, where a voice is raised for the voiceless, the spirit of Faiz lives on unbroken, unsilenced, and eternally free. This was Faiz Ahmad Faiz, the poet who conquered chains with whispers, who turned prison cells into gardens of hope, and who proved that the human spirit, when filled with an unshakable love for all humanity, becomes truly, absolutely indestructible. Thank you for watching. If his story moved you, please consider sharing it and subscribing for more stories of incredible lives.